Could chocolate bars be more valuable than gold? During II, prisoners in German camps created an unexpected economy where traditional currency was useless. Barter became essential for survival. Cigarettes, chocolate, and soap became the currencies of choice, with cigarettes often considered the most valuable. A single cigarette could be traded for food, clothing, or even a safer work detail. This improvised system revealed deep insights into human psychology under extreme stress. Valuables were determined not by their intrinsic worth, but by immediate needs and social dynamics, showcasing the adaptability and resilience of the human spirit. Imagine being held hostage, yet finding yourself sympathizing with your captor. This is the gripping tale of the 1973 Stockholm bank heist. It all began when Jan Erik Olsson stormed a bank and took 4 employees hostage. Over 6 tense days, a peculiar bond formed between captors and captives, leading to the hostages defending their aggressors. This phenomenon, later coined as Stockholm Syndrome, baffled psychologists and the public alike. Why would victims align with their tormentors? This event not only highlighted the complexities of human psychology, but also revolutionized how we understand trauma and survival instincts in desperate situations. Can you imagine people paying the price of a house for a single flower? Welcome to the 17th century Dutch Golden Age, where tulip bulbs became the epicenter of a speculative frenzy known as tulip mania. At its height, the value of tulips soared to astronomical levels. People from all walks of life invested in bulbs, driving prices higher and higher. Some rare tulip varieties were sold for more than the annual income of a skilled craftsman. But like all bubbles, it burst. In 1637, prices plummeted, leaving many in financial ruin. Tulip mania remains one of history's most intriguing examples of collective psychology and speculative bubbles. Ever wondered how the Great Depression's breadlines shaped our understanding of money psychology? In the 1930s, when the stock market crashed and unemployment skyrocketed, millions faced hunger. Breadlines, where people queued for food, became a symbol of desperation. But beyond the physical hunger, these lines revealed deep psychological impacts. People who once felt secure were now grappling with scarcity, altering their spending habits and social behaviors. The fear of lack instilled a frugality that lasted decades. This event highlighted how economic hardship can profoundly change our relationship with money, illustrating the powerful interplay between scarcity and psychological resilience. Ever wonder what happens when someone finds a lost wallet? To uncover human honesty, researchers conducted the Lost Wallet experiment in 2019 across 40 countries. Over 17,000 wallets were strategically lost in public places, each containing varying amounts of money, a key, and a business card. The results were astonishing. Wallets with money were more likely to be returned than those without. Why? It's because the presence of money triggered a sense of moral duty and self-image preservation. Interestingly, the more money inside, the higher the return rate. This study profoundly highlights our intrinsic values and the complexities of moral behavior in financial contexts. Did you know that a video game crash in the 1980s changed how we think about money? The collapse began with an oversaturated market filled with low-quality games. Consumers lost trust and sales plummeted. The unthinkable happened when Atari, once a giant, found itself buried under unsold inventory. Retailers slashed prices, creating a ripple effect that devastated the entire industry. This event wasn't just a financial disaster, it altered consumer psychology. People became more cautious, demanding quality over quantity. The crash taught valuable lessons about trust and perceived value, reshaping not only the gaming world, but also broader economic behaviors. Can you imagine carrying billion-dollar bills just to buy groceries? In the late 2000s, Zimbabwe experienced one of the most extreme cases of hyperinflation in history. This economic meltdown spiraled so out of control that prices doubled daily. By November 2008, the inflation rate hit an unfathomable 79.6 billion% month on month. The central bank responded by issuing notes in increasingly larger denominations, culminating in a 100 trillion Zimbabwean dollar bill. People would rush to spend their money instantly as its value plummeted by the minute. This phenomenon wasn't just about economics. It highlighted the psychological turmoil of living in an economy where money became virtually worthless overnight. Ever wondered why Japan's 500 yen coin had to be redesigned? Back in 1982, Japan introduced a 500 yen coin, but counterfeiting quickly became a serious issue. Skilled counterfeiters replicated these coins so perfectly that vending machines and parking meters were tricked. The Japanese government was forced to act. In 2000, they unveiled a new 500 yen coin with advanced security features, a deeper ridged edge, micro-lettering, and a two-tone color. This redesign wasn't just about technology. It reflected a deeper understanding of money psychology. The tangible changes made people feel more secure, reinforcing trust in the currency and the system. So next time you hold a 500 yen coin, think of the fascinating journey it represents. Ever wondered why the dime store craze of the 1960s was so powerful? These stores, also known as five and dime stores, revolutionized consumer spending habits through clever psychology. By offering a wide range of low-cost items, they capitalized on the appeal of affordable luxury. Shoppers felt a sense of accomplishment and indulgence without breaking the bank. These stores turned mundane shopping trips into thrilling treasure hunts, encouraging impulse buys and frequent visits. The strategic placement of items and constant rotation of stock kept customers curious and engaged. It was a brilliant strategy that forever changed how America shopped, making retail an experience, not just a transaction. Did you ever wonder why Beanie Babies became a cultural phenomenon in the 1990s? It wasn't just luck, it was a masterclass in psychological manipulation. Ty Warner, the creator, limited production runs and retired certain models, creating artificial scarcity. People believed these toys would be valuable investments, a concept known as the greater fool theory. This belief was fueled by the media and word of mouth, generating a feeding frenzy. Collectors saw Beanie Babies as status symbols, and the fear of missing out FOMO played a crucial role. The craze became a perfect storm of supply, demand, and psychological triggers. Can you imagine a time when owning a windmill was the ultimate status symbol? In 1637, the Dutch wind trade transformed windmills into powerful symbols of wealth and prestige. Unlike the more famous tulip mania, this fascinating financial craze saw people investing heavily in windmills, believing they were the key to immense fortune. The psychology behind this craze stemmed from the perception that windmills were not just functional structures, but artifacts of prosperity. As the demand soared, so did their prices, making windmills not just tools for milling grain, but markers of social status. This phenomenon showed how financial markets could be driven by psychological factors, turning everyday objects into coveted treasures. What happens when an entire nation falls under the spell of financial euphoria? In 2008, Iceland experienced a monumental financial crisis. At the heart of this catastrophe was a collective psychological phenomenon. The Icelandic banks, driven by greed and unchecked ambition, expanded rapidly, luring citizens into risky investments. This was compounded by societal pressure to keep up with newfound wealth. People believed that perpetual growth was the new norm. Cognitive biases like overconfidence and herd behavior clouded rational decision-making. As global markets crashed, Iceland's economy imploded, teaching a harsh lesson on the dangers of financial hubris and psychological manipulation. What drove thousands to pour their savings into Florida real estate in the 1920s? It was a perfect storm of optimism, marketing hype, and herd mentality. Developers painted Florida as a tropical paradise, promising guaranteed riches. Ads featured sun-soaked beaches and booming cities, tapping into dreams of easy wealth. Investors, seeing others profit, rushed in, driven by FOMO, fear of missing out. The mania was so intense that properties were sold multiple times without even changing hands. But it was built on shaky ground. Hurricanes, scarcity of buyers, and rampant speculation led to a swift and brutal crash by 1926. The psychology of easy money and collective delusion turned paradise into a financial disaster. What happens when emotions drive investments? Enter the dot-com bubble of the late 90s. Fueled by the promise of the internet, investors poured billions into tech startups with little more than a .com in their name. Stock prices soared and a sense of invincibility took over. But behind the scenes was a classic case of irrational exuberance. a belief that the market could only go up. By 2000, the bubble burst, wiping out trillions in market value. Investors were left stunned, questioning how they could have ignored the warning signs. This event remains a powerful lesson in the psychology of money and the dangers of speculative mania. How did a single company cause one of the most infamous financial disasters in history? In 1720, the South Sea Company promised extraordinary profits from trade with South America. Investors, driven by greed and the fear of missing out, poured their money into the company's stock. As shares soared, more people wanted a piece of the action, inflating the bubble further. However, when profits failed to materialize, panic set in. The bubble burst, wiping out fortunes overnight. This event underscored how herd mentality and speculative mania can cloud judgment, leading to catastrophic financial consequences. The South Sea Bubble is a timeless lesson in the psychology of investing. What happens when optimism turns into financial chaos? In 2008, India faced a microfinance crisis that shook its economic foundation. Microfinance institutions, MFIs, lent small amounts to low-income borrowers, aiming to alleviate poverty. But the psychology of money played a crucial role. Borrowers, driven by hope and social pressure, took multiple loans from different MFIs, assuming they could repay easily. However, the mounting debt became unmanageable, leading to high default rates. This vicious cycle of borrowing and defaulting spiraled, causing widespread financial instability. The crisis revealed how overconfidence and societal expectations can lead to economic disaster. Ever wondered how a small piece of plastic revolutionized consumer behavior? The 1960s credit card revolution did just that. Before the 1960s, people primarily relied on cash or checks. Enter the credit card, a novel concept that promised both convenience and trust. Diners Club introduced the first general-purpose charge card in 1950, but it was the 1960s when credit cards truly took off. With banks like Bank of America issuing the Bank AmeriCard, now Visa, consumers suddenly had the power to buy now and pay later. This shift not only made shopping easier, but also changed how people perceived and managed money. Trust in these cards grew, leading to a culture of spending and borrowing, ultimately transforming the economy itself. What causes an entire nation to believe in unstoppable economic growth? In the 1980s, the Japanese asset price bubble was a vivid example of collective psychology driving an economy. Fueled by excessive optimism, banks offered easy credit, and both real estate and stock prices soared to unprecedented heights. The belief in perpetual growth led companies and individuals to undertake massive investments, convinced that asset values would only rise. This speculative frenzy was bolstered by a feedback loop. Rising prices validated the overconfidence, attracting even more investors. However, when reality hit and the bubble burst in the early 1990s, it left a trail of economic stagnation. Understanding this phenomenon offers insights into the powerful role psychology plays in financial markets. Imagine this: Wall Street executives, driven by overconfidence, believing they could beat the odds and make millions. In the years leading up to the 2008 financial crisis, this wasn't just a scenario, it was reality. These financial wizards, blinded by their own success and buoyed by risky subprime mortgage investments, ignored warning signs. They believed the housing market would continue to rise indefinitely. This overconfidence led to increased risk-taking, creating a financial bubble. When the bubble burst, the consequences were catastrophic. Banks collapsed, markets plummeted, and economies worldwide faced severe recessions. This event highlighted a critical flaw in money psychology: the perilous impact of overconfidence and unchecked risk-taking. What caused the 1987 Black Monday stock market crash? On October 19, 1987, global stock markets plummeted, with the Dow Jones Industrial Average dropping by 22%. The crash wasn't due to economic fundamentals, but rather a psychological domino effect. Investors' fear and panic triggered massive sell-offs, creating a vicious cycle. Program trading, a new technology at the time, exacerbated the situation by executing large sell orders automatically, causing further panic. This event highlighted the powerful impact of collective psychology on financial markets. Understanding the psychological triggers of such events is crucial in preventing future financial disasters. What happens when a nation's economy is pushed to the brink? On September 16, 1992, known as Black Wednesday, the UK faced a financial catastrophe. Britain was forced to exit the European Exchange Rate Mechanism, ERM, leading to a massive devaluation of the pound. The psychological pressure on traders, politicians, and the public was immense. Fear and uncertainty gripped the market, causing panic selling. George Soros, a shrewd investor, famously bet against the pound, earning over $1 billion. This event highlighted how psychological factors, such as fear, risk perception, and herd mentality, can drastically influence financial markets and policy decisions. Black Wednesday remains a powerful reminder of the impact of money psychology. Ever wondered how fear and speculation can collapse entire economies? The 1997 Asian financial crisis is a prime example. It all began in Thailand when investors lost confidence in the baht, leading to massive devaluation. Panic spread like wildfire, triggering capital flight across Asia. Fear fueled speculation, and soon economies like Indonesia and South Korea were on the brink. Contagion was unstoppable. From banks to businesses, everyone felt the squeeze. Governments scrambled to stabilize, but the damage was done. This crisis wasn't just economic, it was psychological. It showed how powerful emotions like fear can trigger financial turmoil on a global scale. What drives masses to economic chaos? The 1929 stock market crash provides a gripping case study in money psychology. It began with a period of rampant speculation. Investors, driven by greed, bought stocks on margin, believing prices would endlessly rise. But in October 1929, reality struck. Prices began to fall, triggering a wave of fear. Investors frantically sold off stocks to cut losses, causing prices to plummet further. This mass panic led to Black Tuesday on October 29, 1929. Trillions vanished overnight. The collective psychology of fear and greed translated into disastrous financial behaviors, showcasing how emotional impulses can devastate economies. What drove the 2000s housing bubble to catastrophic heights? It wasn't just numbers, it was the psychology behind them. Irrational exuberance, a term coined by Alan Greenspan, describes the overly optimistic market sentiment that fueled the bubble. Homebuyers, convinced prices would perpetually climb, stretched their finances to the limit. Meanwhile, lenders, driven by short-term gains, loosened standards, offering subprime mortgages to risky borrowers. As housing demand surged, so did prices, creating a feedback loop that masked underlying risks. When reality struck and defaults soared, the bubble burst, leaving financial ruin in its wake. This event serves as a stark reminder of the power of financial psychology. Have you ever wondered how the savings and loan crisis of the 1960s unfolded? It all began with the allure of risky investments. Banks, desperate for higher returns, loosened their lending standards and poured money into speculative real estate. The psychology behind this frenzy was simple: fear of missing out. Regulatory oversight was lax, allowing these risky ventures to balloon unchecked. When the real estate bubble burst, savings and loan institutions were left with massive losses, shaking public confidence. This crisis unveiled the perilous dance between high-risk investments and inadequate regulation, a sobering lesson in financial history. Have you ever wondered how psychological factors can lead to financial chaos? Enter the 1980s savings and loan crisis, a prime example. Initially, deregulation was intended to help these institutions compete. However, it led to riskier investments and speculative behaviors. Fueled by greed and overconfidence, bankers extended themselves beyond safe limits. The illusion of security masked the underlying risks, and consumers trusted their savings were safe. When the bubble burst, it revealed a stark reality. Irrational exuberance and cognitive biases can wreak havoc. The crisis cost taxpayers billions and reshaped financial regulations, highlighting the crucial role psychology plays in economics. What happens when fear and speculation grip a continent's monetary system? In 1992, Europe was rattled by the ERM crisis, a financial calamity driven by psychological forces. The European Exchange Rate Mechanism aimed to reduce exchange rate variability, but speculators saw an opportunity. George Soros, betting against the British pound, became infamous. As confidence waned, countries faced immense pressure to devalue their currencies. The UK and Italy eventually withdrew from the ERM, leading to massive financial losses. This crisis highlighted the fragile balance between economic policy and market psychology, showcasing how fear can destabilize entire economies. Would you pay for a rock? In 1975, millions did. The pet rock phenomenon wasn't just a quirky fad, it was a masterclass in consumer psychology. Gary Dahl, the creator, marketed these ordinary stones as low-maintenance pets, packaged in a cardboard box with breathing holes and a humorous manual. The secret to its success? Dahl tapped into the human desire for companionship without responsibility. The pet rock offered a solution to a problem people didn't know they had. This craze highlights how clever marketing can exploit psychological triggers, turning mundane objects into must-have items. It was a testament to the power of suggestion and novelty, making people feel part of a unique, communal experience. How did a simple toy cause nationwide hysteria? In the 1980s, the Cabbage Patch Kids craze swept across America, creating unprecedented demand. Parents camped overnight outside stores and even engaged in physical altercations to secure one for their children. But why? The phenomenon can be attributed to scarcity marketing and the psychological principle known as FOMO, fear of missing out. By producing limited quantities, manufacturers created a perceived exclusivity. This scarcity triggered an emotional response, making the dolls highly desirable. The intense media coverage further fueled the frenzy, transforming the Cabbage Patch Kids from mere toys into must-have cultural icons. Did you know the 1970s saw a wave of pyramid schemes that duped thousands? This was more than just a scam, it was a masterclass in money psychology. Picture this: charismatic leaders promising lavish returns in exchange for small investments. The catch: recruit more people to do the same. It wasn't greed alone that drew people in, it was the fear of missing out and the allure of social proof. Everyone wanted to be part of the next big thing. The schemes flourished until authorities caught on, but not before millions of dollars were lost. The era serves as a stark reminder of how easily financial deception can exploit basic human psychology. Did you know a simple loyalty program once captivated millions, reshaping consumer behavior? In the 1960s, the Green Stamps loyalty program emerged, sparking a fascinating psychological shift. Shoppers earned stamps with purchases, which they could later redeem for goods. This program wasn't just about rewards, it tapped into deep-seated human desires. The act of collecting stamps created a sense of accomplishment and progress. Shoppers felt a growing commitment to stores offering stamps, influencing their shopping decisions. The anticipation of free rewards harnessed delayed gratification, keeping consumers engaged. This pioneering strategy laid the foundation for today's loyalty programs, demonstrating the enduring power of psychological incentives. Did you know that Australia once waged war against emus? In 1932, the Great Emu War was launched to control the emu population ravaging crops during the Great Depression. Armed with machine guns, soldiers expected a swift victory. Instead, emus outmaneuvered them, leading to a costly failure. The unintended economic consequence? Public spending soared, diverting funds from essential services to a futile cause. This event highlights a fascinating aspect of money psychology, how desperation and mismanagement can lead to irrational financial decisions. It's a vivid reminder of the complex interplay between human behavior and economics. Ever wondered why soap operas are called soap operas? It all started in the 1950s when soap manufacturers like Procter & Gamble began sponsoring daytime TV dramas. These shows were designed to captivate homemakers, the primary audience, during their daily routines. By weaving product placements and commercials seamlessly into the storylines, advertisers influenced viewers' spending habits subtly yet profoundly. Characters used certain brands, setting trends and normalizing purchases. This strategy not only boosted sales for the sponsors, but also set a precedent for modern advertising, proving that emotional engagement can drive consumer behavior in powerful ways. How did the 2008 financial crisis shape millennial spending habits? As the world watched economies crumble, millennials were entering adulthood. The Great Recession instilled a deep-seated financial caution in this generation. Unlike their predecessors, millennials prioritize experiences over material possessions, often choosing to rent rather than buy. This shift influenced industries from housing to travel. They witnessed job losses and shrinking savings, leading to a focus on financial security and debt aversion. Budgeting apps and financial literacy surged in popularity. The crisis not only defined their financial decisions, but also forged a generation more mindful and strategic about money. What if I told you the 1980s McDonald's Monopoly game was rigged? In a scheme involving FBI investigations and multi-million-dollar fraud, the psychology of greed and trust was exploited masterfully. Jerome Jacobson, the man at the center, manipulated the game pieces to ensure friends and associates claimed the top prizes, amassing over $24 million. The allure of easy money drew countless participants, while Jacobson's careful orchestration preyed on the belief in fairness and chance. This scandal uncovered the dark side of human psychology, showing how desperation and deceit can override moral boundaries. The fallout was massive, forever changing promotional games. What if we told you a secret meeting in 1971 changed the global financial landscape forever? Enter the Smithsonian Agreement. Negotiated by the world's top financial minds, this clandestine gathering aimed to address the collapse of the Bretton Woods system. In a dramatic shift, the U.S. agreed to devalue the dollar against gold, effectively ending dollar convertibility to the precious metal. Major currencies were revalued, leading to greater exchange rate flexibility. This agreement temporarily stabilized the global economy, but ushered in the era of floating exchange rates. The once hush-hush meeting in Washington, D.C. marked a pivotal moment in monetary history, reshaping how nations handle currency. Have you ever wondered how a single trader could bring down a banking giant? In 1995, Barings Bank, one of the oldest and most prestigious banks in Britain, collapsed due to the reckless actions of Nick Leeson. Working as a derivatives trader in Singapore, Leeson took increasingly larger and unauthorized positions in the futures market. His initial success masked growing losses, which he tried to recover through even riskier bets. By the time his actions came to light, Leeson had accumulated $1.4 billion in losses, wiping out the bank's capital and leading to its downfall. The Barings Bank collapse remains a pivotal lesson in the psychology of money and risk. What if I told you one of the greatest heists in history happened in 1855? The Great Gold Robbery remains an astounding tale of cunning and audacity. On May 15, 1855, a shipment of gold bullion valued at £12,000 was set to travel via train from London to Paris. Employing masterful deception, thieves replaced the safe's locks with identical ones. Once the gold was loaded, they used duplicate keys to access the treasure mid-journey. By the time the train reached its destination, the gold was gone, replaced with lead shot. Remarkably, the culprits left no trace, baffling authorities. This unprecedented act of financial deception showcases the incredible ingenuity and audacity of 19th century criminals. What happens when ambition crosses the line into greed and deception? In 1974, the Franklin National Bank experienced a catastrophic collapse, becoming one of the largest bank failures in U.S. history. At the heart of this downfall was Michele Sindona, an Italian financier whose overambitious ventures led to fraudulent activities. Sindona's psychological drive for power and wealth pushed him to manipulate currency markets and falsify financial statements. The bank's rapid expansion was built on shaky foundations, and when the fraud was uncovered, it triggered panic among investors and depositors. This cautionary tale underscores the perilous path of unchecked ambition and the devastating psychological impact of financial deception. Have you wondered how a single currency collapse can trigger a global financial crisis? In 1997, the Thai baht did just that. Thailand's economy was booming, fueled by foreign investments and a pegged currency. But behind the scenes, debt was mounting. On July 2, 1997, Thailand floated its baht, causing it to plummet. Investors panicked, pulling out their money, leading to a financial domino effect throughout Asia. Countries like Indonesia, South Korea, and Malaysia soon followed, facing their own economic turmoil. This crisis exposed the fragility of financial systems and the psychological impact of investor confidence, reshaping global economic strategies forever. Did you know that the 1970s saw a hidden financial crisis that shook Britain? The British secondary banking crisis of 1973 to 1975 is a lesser-known yet gripping chapter in financial history. As secondary banks, which were less regulated, engaged in risky lending and speculative investments, the market started to unravel. When property prices plummeted, these banks faced massive defaults, leading to a liquidity crunch. The Bank of England initiated a rescue operation, fearing wider economic fallout. This crisis highlighted the fragility of financial institutions and reshaped policies to prevent future collapses. It's a stark reminder of how psychology and panic can ripple through financial systems. Ever wondered how a single crisis could reshape an entire industry? Enter the 1969 credit crunch. It began as a shockwave through the financial sector when the Federal Reserve tightened monetary policy to combat inflation. Banks, suddenly deprived of liquidity, found themselves unable to meet withdrawal demands. This led to a domino effect of panicked withdrawals and failing institutions. The chaos prompted the establishment of crucial regulatory measures, including stricter reserve requirements and enhanced oversight. This event highlighted the delicate balance between monetary policy and financial stability, forever changing how banks operate and paving the way for modern banking regulations. What happens when irrational exuberance takes over Wall Street? Enter Pets.com. In the late 1990s, this online pet supply retailer skyrocketed during the dot-com boom. Founded in 1998, Pets.com seemed like the next big thing, with a nationwide advertising campaign including the iconic sock puppet mascot. Investors poured millions into the company, driven by the mania of the internet age. However, by 2000, the bubble burst. Pets.com faced insurmountable losses and a flawed business model, relying heavily on expensive advertising while failing to generate sustainable revenue. By November 2000, Pets.com was defunct, becoming a symbol of the dot-com crash and a lesson in money psychology. What if one decision could reshape the entire global economy? In August 1971, President Richard Nixon made such a decision by ending the Bretton Woods system, effectively taking the U.S. off the gold standard. This unexpected move, known as the Nixon shock, meant that the dollar would no longer be directly convertible to gold. The implications were monumental. Currencies began to float, and the era of fixed exchange rates came to an end. Inflation soared, and the global financial landscape was forever altered. Nixon's announcement marked the beginning of a new era in economic policy, transforming how countries in financially and setting the stage for the modern global economy. Ever wondered how one man's confidence could rescue an entire financial system? In 1907, Wall Street faced a catastrophic crisis. The stock market plummeted, banks were on the brink of collapse, and panic spread like wildfire. Enter J.P. Morgan, a titan of finance. With calm determination, he summoned top bankers to his library, locking the doors until a solution emerged. Morgan pledged his own funds to stabilize banks, insisting others do the same. His assurance restored trust, halted the panic, and revived the market. This daring intervention not only saved Wall Street, but also paved the way for the creation of the Federal Reserve, ensuring greater financial stability. Did you know that in 1963, Wall Street was rocked by a scandal involving salad oil? The Great Salad Oil Swindle, masterminded by Anthony Tino DeAngelis, was a financial fraud of epic proportions. DeAngelis, a former commodities trader, convinced banks to lend him massive amounts of money using salad oil as collateral. However, the tanks he claimed were filled with oil were mostly water, with just a thin layer of oil floating on top. This deception led to losses exceeding $180 million, causing several major financial institutions to collapse. The scandal exposed glaring weaknesses in regulatory oversight and risk management, and forever changed how Wall Street operated. What drives someone to commit the perfect crime? In 1997, the Swiss bank heist captured global attention for its meticulous planning and execution. A group of unknown perpetrators managed to bypass the tightest security measures, making off with millions. The criminals left no trace, leading experts to ponder, was this about the money or the thrill? Psychologists suggest that the masterminds behind such heists are often motivated by a mix of high-stakes excitement and a desire for control. The crime's flawless execution points to individuals with exceptional intellect and a deep understanding of human behavior, making this heist a fascinating study in money psychology. Ever heard of the 1930s penny auction? During the Great Depression, farmers were losing their homes and land to bank foreclosures. But communities found a unique way to fight back. Imagine arriving at an auction, expecting to see desperate sales, only to find neighbors gathered in unity. Bidders would collude, placing artificially low bids, sometimes just a penny, and use intimidation to keep outsiders from participating. Once the property was won for next to nothing, it was returned to the original owner. These auctions weren't just financial maneuvers, they were acts of defiance and solidarity, a community's way of protecting its own during hard times. What if saving money could make you a millionaire? In the 1960s, Britain was captivated by this very idea through the revolutionary premium bonds. Introduced in 1956 by Chancellor Harold Macmillan, premium bonds offered a unique twist to traditional savings. Instead of earning interest, bondholders entered a monthly lottery with tax-free cash prizes. By the 1960s, the craze had taken over the nation, with over 11 million people investing in hopes of striking it rich. The allure? Even the smallest investment could turn into a life-changing win. This ingenious scheme not only promoted savings but also transformed the psychology of money, merging the thrill of gambling with financial prudence. Who knew saving could be so exciting? What if I told you a single event in 2009 could revolutionize finance forever? On January 3, 2009, Satoshi Nakamoto mined the first Bitcoin block, known as the Genesis block. Embedded within this block was a cryptic message: the time 03 Jan 2009, Chancellor on brink of second bailout for banks. This wasn't just a timestamp, it was a statement against traditional banking systems. The Genesis block marked the start of Bitcoin, a decentralized digital currency that defied government control and bank manipulation. It laid the groundwork for a new financial era, challenging how we think about money, value, and trust. Welcome to the dawn of cryptocurrency. What if a single family could control the world's silver supply? In 1978, the Hunt brothers tried to do just that. Nelson Bunker Hunt and William Herbert Hunt, heirs to an oil fortune, saw silver as the ultimate asset to protect against inflation. They began buying silver in massive quantities, driving prices from $6 per ounce to almost $50 by 1980. As their holdings grew, so did their influence, sparking a financial frenzy. However, their ambitions were thwarted on Silver Thursday, March 27, 1980, when a market crash forced them to liquidate their positions. The fallout? Massive losses and stricter market regulations, a reminder of the perils of market manipulation. Did you know a simple children's game could spark a billion-dollar craze? In the 1990s, Pokémon stormed the world, captivating millions of kids and adults alike. What started as a modest video game by Nintendo soon evolved into a global phenomenon, influencing toys, trading cards, TV shows, and movies. The frenzy was so intense that rare Pokémon cards became valuable currency. Parents lined up for hours to buy the latest game or card set, while kids traded feverishly during recess. Retailers couldn't keep products on shelves, and media coverage only fueled the craze. Pokémon didn't just capture imaginations, it revolutionized marketing, branding, and consumer behavior forever. Did you know a single trader nearly collapsed the global copper market in 1996? Yasuo Hamanaka, known as Mr. Copper, worked for Sumitomo Corporation and orchestrated one of the largest market manipulations in history. Over a decade, Hamanaka used his significant influence to drive up copper prices, amassing billions in clandestine profits. However, his empire crumbled when internal audits uncovered his unauthorized trades. The scandal resulted in a $2.6 billion loss for Sumitomo and led to stricter regulations in financial markets worldwide. Hamanaka's ambition and deception serve as a stark reminder of the risks of unchecked power in finance. What happens when a stable currency suddenly becomes ultra-volatile? On January 15, 2015, the Swiss National Bank, SNB, made a shocking announcement. It would unpeg the Swiss franc from the euro. For over 3 years, the SNB had kept the franc at a fixed exchange rate of 1.20 per euro to prevent deflation and protect Swiss exports. The unexpected decision sent shockwaves through financial markets worldwide. The franc soared by nearly 30% against the euro within minutes, causing billions in losses for traders and financial institutions. This event highlighted the psychological impact of sudden policy changes and how market trust can be shaken in an instant. Ever wondered how Wall Street turned into a high-stakes casino in the 1980s? Enter the era of junk bonds. These high-yield, high-risk bonds became the bread and butter for risk-takers. Michael Milken, a name now synonymous with junk bonds, transformed Drexel Burnham Lambert into a powerhouse by persuading investors to buy into companies deemed too risky. The lure? Sky-high returns. Behind the glitz, though, was a ticking time bomb. Companies financed by junk bonds often struggled to pay the hefty interest rates. When defaults began to rise, it triggered financial instability. The junk bond era ended dramatically, but its legacy reshaped modern finance, illustrating the perilous dance between risk and reward. What happens when genius and hubris collide in the world of finance? Long-term capital management, LTCM, a hedge fund founded in 1994 by Nobel laureates, became infamous for its dramatic rise and fall. Armed with complex mathematical models, LTCM promised consistent returns by exploiting market inefficiencies. Investors poured billions into the fund, entranced by its stellar early performance. However, the psyche of overconfidence and reliance on flawed risk models soon led to disaster. By 1998, the Russian financial crisis triggered a chain reaction, exposing LTCM's over-leveraged positions. As panic spread, the fund lost $4.6 billion in a matter of months, necessitating a Federal Reserve-led bailout to prevent a broader financial meltdown. What happens when a nation's currency collapses overnight? In 1998, Russia faced a financial cataclysm as the ruble plummeted. Triggered by declining oil prices and political instability, the crisis reached a climax on August 17th, when the Russian government devalued the ruble and defaulted on its debt. This decision shattered investor confidence worldwide, sparking panic and pulling other emerging markets into the vortex. Banks collapsed, millions lost their savings, and global markets trembled. The psychological impact was profound, altering perceptions of financial security and influencing international policies. This event remains a stark reminder of the fragile nature of global finance. Ever wonder how a wealthy county could go bankrupt? In 1994, Orange County, California, faced financial ruin due to risky investments. The county's treasurer, Robert Citron, used complex financial instruments like derivatives, chasing high returns and ignoring the risks. Citron's strategy worked initially, doubling the county's investment income. However, when interest rates rose, the market turned against him, leading to massive losses. By the end of the year, Orange County declared bankruptcy, with a deficit of $1.7 billion. This shocking event exposed the dangers of aggressive financial tactics and reshaped public investment strategies nationwide. Have you ever wondered what happens when a nation's currency faces a massive devaluation? In 1971, India faced a crippling economic challenge with the devaluation of the Indian rupee. Following the Indo-Pakistani War, India's financial reserves were severely strained. The government was forced to devalue the rupee by a staggering 57.5%. This move was aimed at correcting the balance of payments and boosting exports, but it had unforeseen consequences. Prices of essential goods skyrocketed, causing widespread public unrest. The psychological impact on the population was immense, creating a ripple effect that influenced economic policies for decades. This crisis remains a pivotal moment in India's economic history. What if one day, the money in your pocket became worthless? In 2003, this was the reality for millions of Iraqis. After the fall of Saddam Hussein, Iraq faced the monumental task of revaluing its currency, the Iraqi dinar. The old dinar, emblazoned with Hussein's image, was a symbol of a past regime. The new dinar, introduced later that year, aimed to stabilize the economy and instill confidence in the future. Citizens had just 3 months to exchange their old notes. This rapid change meant the Central Bank of Iraq had to print and distribute billions of new bills swiftly. The revaluation was a gamble, but it was a crucial step in Iraq's economic rebuilding. What happens when a nation's currency collapses overnight? In 2001, Argentina faced one of the most severe economic crises in history. With the peso pegged to the US dollar, the country amassed unsustainable debt. When the government defaulted, the peso's value plummeted, leading to frozen bank accounts and rampant unemployment. Citizens stormed banks, desperate to retrieve their savings, only to find their money devalued or inaccessible. The crisis reshaped Argentina's financial psyche, leaving a deep distrust in banks and government policies. It was a stark lesson in the fragility of economic stability and the profound impact of financial mismanagement on everyday lives. Did you know that in 1983, Israel faced a financial crisis that shook its economy to the core? The Israeli bank stock crisis unfolded when the government secretly intervened to manipulate bank stock prices. For years, Israeli banks had been inflating their stock values, luring investors with the promise of stable, rising returns. However, the bubble burst in October 1983, leading to a massive market crash. The government's clandestine buying spree to support stock prices was revealed, eroding public trust. This crisis highlighted the psychological impact of financial manipulation and the delicate balance between government intervention and market stability. It remains a pivotal moment in financial history, illustrating the dangers of market distortion. Ever wondered how a single bank collapse could shake the financial world? In 1974, the Herstatt Bank in Germany did just that. Known for its aggressive currency trading, the bank's downfall began on June 26, 1974. Herstatt's traders executed massive currency swaps, selling Deutsche Marks for US dollars. However, due to time zone differences, they received the Deutsche Marks before the US banks opened, leaving a significant gap. At 3:30 p.m., before the American banks could settle their side of the transaction, German regulators intervened, closing Herstatt Bank. This left numerous banks stranded with substantial losses, leading to the creation of new international regulations. The Herstatt collapse is a stark reminder of the complexities and risks in global finance. What if you could own a piece of an entire nation's wealth overnight? In the 1990s, Russia embarked on a daring economic experiment called the Voucher Privatization Program. Citizens received vouchers worth around $25 each, intended to distribute shares of state-owned companies. The goal was to transition from communism to capitalism, but the outcome was unexpected. Most people, facing poverty and uncertainty, sold their vouchers for quick cash, often at a fraction of their value. Opportunistic oligarchs scooped them up, amassing vast fortunes and power. This rapid wealth transfer created a stark divide, reshaping Russia's socio-economic landscape in ways still felt today. Imagine a nation gripped by gold fever, driven by promises of untold wealth in the New World. This was France in 1719, at the height of the Mississippi Bubble. Spearheaded by Scottish financier John Law, the scheme involved the Mississippi Company, which held a monopoly on trade in the French territories of North America. Investors poured their life savings into shares, driving prices to astronomical heights. But by 1720, the bubble burst. Shares plummeted, fortunes were lost, and France plunged into financial chaos. The collapse not only shattered individual dreams, but also left a lasting scar on the nation's economy. The Mississippi Bubble remains a stark reminder of the dangers of speculative frenzy. Have you ever wondered what happens when a nation's currency collapses? Welcome to 1696 England, the year of the Great Recoinage. The kingdom faced a severe economic crisis as its silver coins were heavily clipped and counterfeited, reducing their value and trust. Sir Isaac Newton, then Warden of the Royal Mint, played a pivotal role in this dramatic event. As coins lost credibility, people hoarded them, causing a liquidity crunch. Newton led the effort to recall, melt, and remint millions of coins. This enormous undertaking restored faith in the currency, but at a significant short-term economic cost. The Great Recoinage of 1696 remains a fascinating study in money psychology and economic resilience. Have you ever wondered how a nation's financial system can crumble overnight? In 2008, Iceland experienced one of the most dramatic financial crises in history, driven by a collective mindset of euphoria and risk-taking. The country's three major banks accumulated debt 10 times the size of Iceland's GDP. With blind faith in limitless growth, citizens invested heavily, leading to a bubble that burst spectacularly. When the banks collapsed, Icelanders faced massive losses, government intervention, and a nationwide reevaluation of their financial behaviors. This crisis exemplifies how euphoric optimism can lead to catastrophic economic failure, serving as a profound lesson in the psychology of money. Ever wondered what happens when billionaires try to control a precious metal market? On March 27, 1980, the world witnessed the dramatic fallout of Silver Thursday. The Hunt brothers, Nelson Bunker and William Herbert, attempted to corner the silver market, hoarding vast amounts and driving prices to unprecedented heights. Starting in the 1970s, their aggressive buying spree saw silver prices soar from $6 to $50 an ounce. However, through a mix of regulatory changes, margin calls, and the sheer weight of their own ambitions, the market crashed. Prices plummeted, resulting in billions lost and a financial panic that rippled through global markets. The Hunt brothers saga remains a stark reminder of the perils of market manipulation. How does fear shape our financial world? In 2014, Russia faced an economic storm as the ruble plummeted. Sanctions over Ukraine and plunging oil prices hit hard. Citizens rushed to convert rubles to foreign currency, fearing further devaluation. This mass behavior only worsened the crisis. Retailers saw a shopping frenzy. Imported goods became coveted treasures as their prices soared. The central bank's interest rate hike to 17% aimed to stem the tide, but psychological panic was already at play. Economic resilience battled human fear, showcasing the profound impact of collective psychology on financial stability. The ruble's plight was a stark reminder. In finance, perception often becomes reality. Imagine waking up to a world buzzing with voices and music. In the 1920s, radio transformed communication, creating a new form of advertising. Companies realized that audio could evoke emotions, shaping consumer desires. This era saw brands like Kellogg's and Procter & Gamble harness radio's power to connect with audiences, turning listeners into loyal customers. The thrill of live broadcasts sparked a collective experience, making products feel essential. This psychological shift meant people began to trust brands more than ever. The radio craze didn't just sell products, it created pop culture, altering how we perceive consumption and connection even today. What happens when a basic necessity suddenly becomes scarce? The 1970s gasoline crisis shook the world, leading to long lines at the pump and skyrocketing prices. The oil embargo imposed by OPEC triggered a nationwide panic, forcing consumers to rethink their driving habits. People began carpooling, using public transport, and even purchasing fuel-efficient vehicles. This shift was not just about saving money. It reflected a deeper psychological response to scarcity. Fear and uncertainty influenced decision-making, as Americans sought to regain control over their budgets. This crisis reshaped economic policies and consumer behavior, highlighting how scarcity can transform societies. In the late 1980s, Japan experienced an extraordinary economic boom, driven by soaring asset prices and aggressive financial policies. This phenomenon, known as the Japanese bubble economy, saw real estate and stock market values inflate to staggering levels. Individuals and corporations invested heavily, often borrowing beyond their means. The sense of invincibility spread, leading to extravagant spending and speculation. By 1990, the bubble burst, causing a dramatic economic collapse. The aftermath led to a lost decade filled with stagnation and deflation. This cautionary tale highlights the dangers of unchecked optimism and the psychological pitfalls in financial markets, reminding us all to be wary of excessive risk and greed. In the 1930s, America was gripped by the beer wars, a fierce competition for market dominance among breweries. With Prohibition repealed in 1933, the race was on to capture the hearts and wallets of thirsty consumers. Companies like Anheuser-Busch and Pabst engaged in aggressive marketing tactics, employing psychological strategies to influence buying behaviors. Ads showcased refreshing images and promoted beer as the drink of choice for social gatherings. This decade saw a shift in consumer psychology, as marketing shifted from simple product benefits to lifestyle branding. The battle culminated in unique promotions, loyalty programs, and even celebrity endorsements, shaping the beer industry as we know it today. In the late 1980s, Japan experienced an extraordinary economic boom, driven by soaring asset prices and aggressive financial policies. This phenomenon, known as the Japanese bubble economy, saw real estate and stock market values inflate to staggering levels. Individuals and corporations invested heavily, often borrowing beyond their means. The sense of invincibility spread, leading to extravagant spending and speculation. By 1990, the bubble burst, causing a dramatic economic collapse. The aftermath led to a lost decade filled with stagnation and deflation. This cautionary tale highlights the dangers of unchecked optimism and the psychological pitfalls in financial markets, reminding us all to be wary of excessive risk and greed. In 1772, London faced a financial meltdown known as the Great British Credit Crisis, unleashing psychological chaos among its citizens. As rumors spread about the insolvency of a prominent bank, panic ensued. People rushed to withdraw their deposits, fearing they would lose everything. The tension escalated, turning social gatherings into whispers of doubt and distrust. Investors, once confident in their ventures, began to question their financial strategies, leading to a collective anxiety that rippled through society. This crisis highlighted the fragile nature of trust in financial systems and the profound impact of fear on economic behavior, reshaping attitudes toward credit and risk for generations to come. In December 1994, Mexico faced a shocking financial crisis that sent ripples through global markets. Known as the Mexican peso crisis, it was sparked by political instability and the sudden devaluation of the peso. As the government struggled to maintain economic stability, investors grew wary, triggering massive capital flight. Just a week into 1995, the peso's value plummeted by 40%, leading to soaring inflation and unemployment. The crisis exposed deep-rooted issues, such as reliance on foreign investments and inadequate economic policies. The U.S. intervened with a $50 billion bailout, but the effects lingered, teaching vital lessons on fiscal responsibility and market psychology that resonate today. In the 1980s, America faced an unexpected cheese crisis. With dairy prices plummeting, the government amassed an astonishing surplus of cheese, reaching over 1 billion pounds. How did this happen? It all started with government subsidies aimed at supporting farmers. As production soared, demand faltered, leaving mountains of cheese in storage. The solution? The USDA began distributing this surplus to schools and food banks, turning a financial crisis into a unique food assistance program. This event not only reshaped dairy economics, but also sparked debates on government intervention in agriculture. The 1980s cheese crisis serves as a striking example of unintended consequences in economic policy. In 2008, Iceland faced a severe crisis as the government mismanaged fishing quotas, leading to economic turmoil for local fishermen. This event was not just an economic disaster, it deeply affected the psychological well-being of those reliant on fishing for their livelihoods. Fishermen, who once had a steady income, found themselves struggling, battling anxiety and despair as quotas plummeted. The community's identity, intertwined with the sea, was threatened. Many fishermen felt they lost not only their jobs, but also their purpose. This crisis illuminated the profound connection between economics and mental health, revealing how financial instability can dismantle not just economies, but the very fabric of communities. What happens when dreams of wealth crumble? In 1819, America faced its first major economic crisis, ignited by rampant land speculation. Following the War of 1812, the nation was expanding rapidly, and banks eagerly granted loans for land purchases. Investors thought they could get rich quick, but by 1819, the bubble burst. The Second Bank of the United States tightened credit, causing land values to plummet. Panic ensued as banks failed, businesses shuttered, and unemployment soared. This event not only reshaped the economy, but also altered public perception of banking and investment. It marked a turning point in American financial history, highlighting the dangers of speculation. In the 1990s, the United States experienced a phenomenon known as lottery fever. Millions flocked to buy tickets, captivated by the allure of instant wealth. But why? Behavioral economists point to cognitive biases, such as the optimism bias, which led people to underestimate the improbability of winning. This irrational exuberance heightened as lottery jackpots soared into the hundreds of millions. Media coverage intensified the frenzy, showcasing winners and their newfound lifestyles, reinforcing the belief that winning was attainable. The era sparked a cultural shift, blurring the lines between financial planning and gambling, fundamentally altering our relationship with money and risk-taking, turning chance into a mass obsession. In 1973, a seemingly distant event changed how we view money: the oil crisis. Triggered by an OPEC embargo, fuel shortages gripped the world, sending prices skyrocketing. Suddenly, consumers faced uncertainty, leading to panic buying and a drastic change in spending habits. Families, once free with their cash, became paranoid about the future and started hoarding essentials. This led to an unprecedented psychological shift. Money evolved from a tool of freedom to a source of anxiety. As people grappled with their finances, trust in institutions eroded. The crisis didn't just affect the economy, it altered our relationship with money, sowing seeds of caution that still influence consumer behavior today. In 1964, the British government shocked the nation by devaluing the pound, triggering a wave of psychological turmoil among citizens. This decision, made to address economic challenges, shifted public perception of financial stability. As the pound lost value, fear gripped the populace. People began hoarding goods, fearing further economic decline. Trust in financial institutions plummeted, leading to increased anxiety and a sense of betrayal. Social interactions changed. Conversations focused on finances rather than community. The devaluation not only impacted bank balances, but also reshaped the collective mindset, revealing how closely money is tied to identity and security. This event remains a crucial lesson in money psychology. When the Indian Ocean tsunami struck in 2004, it unleashed destruction across multiple countries. But amidst the chaos, stories of resilience emerged. Communities banded together, demonstrating the power of collective action. Local fishermen, once devastated, formed cooperatives to share resources and rebuild their livelihoods. Tourism, vital for many coastal areas, slowly revived through local initiatives, emphasizing sustainable practices. Financial aid was crucial, yet often mismanaged, leading to lessons in transparency and community involvement. This tragic event ignited a transformation in disaster response, illustrating how even the worst circumstances can foster unity and economic growth. During the Great Depression, as cash became scarce, communities turned to an alternative currency known as scrip. This fascinating solution emerged in towns where local businesses issued their own money to help stimulate the economy. Scrip was often made from paper or metal and could be exchanged for goods and services at participating shops. Although it was meant to be temporary, many residents relied on it for their daily needs, creating a sense of community resilience. However, as the economy slowly recovered, scrip faded away, becoming a forgotten chapter in economic history. The story of scrip highlights the psychological impact of money and how people adapt in times of crisis. In the 1970s, the UK faced an unprecedented inflation crisis that gripped the nation with money anxiety. Prices skyrocketed, and everyday essentials became luxuries. The inflation rate peaked at a staggering 26.9% in 1975, leaving families struggling to make ends meet. This economic turmoil triggered widespread panic, leading to a psychological shift in how people viewed money. Many began hoarding cash, fearing that their savings would evaporate. As wages failed to keep pace, the working class took to the streets in protest, demanding better pay. The crisis fundamentally altered spending habits, instilling a deep-rooted fear of financial instability that resonates in society to this day. In 2009, Greece faced an unprecedented financial meltdown, igniting the European debt crisis. Beyond economics, this turmoil deeply affected the Greek psyche, leading to a crisis of national identity. As austerity measures stripped away social programs, citizens experienced loss of dignity and pride. The once confident Greeks found themselves grappling with shame and societal stigma. Protests erupted, reflecting collective anger and frustration. The narrative shifted from a proud heritage to a narrative of failure. This psychological toll prompted a re-evaluation of values, priorities, and aspirations, fundamentally altering how Greeks viewed themselves and their place in Europe. Resilience emerged, but the scars remain. What happens when a nation experiences a psychological shift in consumer behavior? In the 1990s, South Korea emerged from economic turmoil into a vibrant economic miracle, driven by a newfound consumer confidence. As the government embraced globalization, citizens shifted from frugality to consumerism, eager to embrace new technologies and lifestyles. This transformation was fueled by a youthful population, excited about the possibilities of the modern world. South Koreans began to prioritize brand consciousness, leading to an explosion in domestic markets. This cultural shift not only transformed individual lives, but also positioned South Korea as a global economic powerhouse, altering its identity forever. Have you ever wondered how creative minds can revolutionize economies? In the 1980s, the DIY movement surged, fueled by economic challenges and a desire for self-sufficiency. People began to embrace crafting, home improvement, and even homemade fashion as a means to save money and assert individuality. Rising costs and inflation drove many to rethink consumerism. Instead of buying, they started creating. This shift not only empowered individuals, but also birthed a thriving cottage industry. The movement highlighted how personal finance intertwines with creativity, challenging societal norms. Today, the legacy of the DIY movement continues to inspire innovation and self-reliance in financial decisions. In the early 1900s, the United States faced a fierce debate over the gold standard. Proponents argued it provided stability, tethering currency to a tangible asset. Critics, however, saw it as a straitjacket, limiting economic growth. The pivotal moment came during the 1896 presidential election, when William Jennings Bryan championed free silver, aiming to expand the money supply and aid struggling farmers. His famous Cross of Gold speech electrified the nation, igniting passion over monetary policy. As the nation grappled with financial crises, trust in currency became paramount. Would a gold-backed system ensure prosperity, or would it stifle innovation and independence? The choice shaped America's economic identity. In 1948, a remarkable yet often overlooked event reshaped Germany's economy: the currency reform. After World War II, Germany was facing hyperinflation, with the Reichsmark rapidly losing its value. To combat this crisis, the Western Allies introduced the Deutsche Mark, replacing the old currency at a rate of 10-to-1. This drastic measure sparked a revival, restoring faith in money and purchasing power. Overnight, citizens regained their economic footing, leading to a consumer boom. The psychological impact was profound. Trust in currency was restored, leading to increased spending and investment. This reform not only stabilized Germany, but laid the foundation for its post-war economic miracle. In 1982, Mexico declared its inability to service its debt, triggering a crisis that sent shockwaves through global financial markets. Investors, initially optimistic, were struck by fear as the reality of massive defaults set in. This shift in sentiment transformed rational decision-making into emotional turmoil. Panic selling ensued, causing stocks to plummet. The psychological impact was profound. Trust in the Mexican economy evaporated overnight, as investors questioned the stability of emerging markets. This crisis taught investors that psychology, driven by fear and uncertainty, can be as influential as numbers and policies, forever altering their approach to risk and investment strategies. Imagine walking into a record store in the 1970s, where vibrant album covers and eclectic sounds filled the air. This decade witnessed an unexpected vinyl record boom, driven by a cultural shift towards individuality and self-expression. As rock and roll, disco, and punk flourished, consumers increasingly turned to vinyl to connect with artists and communities. This renewed love for analog music not only boosted sales, but also shaped cultural identity, symbolizing freedom and rebellion. The affordability of records made them accessible, while the tactile experience of playing vinyl added emotional depth. This phenomenon marked a pivotal moment in music history, transforming consumer behavior and cultural landscapes. In the late 1970s, Argentina faced a devastating hyperinflation crisis that transformed its economy and society. Starting in 1975, inflation soared uncontrollably, peaking at a staggering 1,200% in 1980. The government's ineffective economic policies, including excessive money printing and price controls, led to widespread distrust in the currency. As prices doubled almost overnight, citizens rushed to spend their pesos, creating a cycle of devaluation. By the end of this tumultuous period, Argentinians had lost their life savings, leading to a haunting legacy of financial trauma. This crisis not only reshaped economic policies, but also profoundly influenced the collective psychology surrounding money in Argentina. In the early 1980s, a shopping phenomenon emerged: Black Friday. This day, marking the start of the holiday shopping season, became notorious for its chaotic sales and frenzied consumers. The term, originally used to describe financial crises, shifted to symbolize the moment retailers turned a profit or went into the black. As stores offered massive discounts, shoppers flocked, sometimes leading to dangerous stampedes. One infamous incident in 1983 saw a crowd of over 2,000 people rush a store, resulting in injuries. The event highlighted how deeply ingrained consumer behavior can be, revealing our willingness to sacrifice safety for perceived savings, reshaping future shopping traditions and marketing strategies. What drove Americans in the 1950s to invest fervently in savings bonds? Post-World War II, a wave of national pride surged across the nation. The government's marketing campaign painted bonds as a patriotic duty, feeding into the collective psyche. Families were encouraged to buy these bonds, not just as an investment, but as a way to honor their country and support its growth. Schools even participated, teaching children about savings bonds through fun activities, making it a national movement. By 1956, over 40 million Americans held bonds, showcasing a unique blend of patriotism and financial strategy. This phenomenon reshaped how Americans viewed investment, intertwining it with national identity. What if I told you that one of the most significant economic downturns occurred just a few years after the Great Depression? Enter the 1937 recession. Triggered by the Federal Reserve tightening monetary policy, this crisis led to a sharp decline in industrial production and a surge in unemployment. The economy, still fragile from the earlier downturn, faced severe challenges as businesses failed and consumer spending plummeted. Ironically, this event revealed a crucial lesson about money psychology. Confidence in the economy is paramount. As people lost faith, they hoarded cash, leading to a vicious cycle of stagnation. The 1937 recession teaches us that trust fuels economic recovery. What happens when trust shatters? In 1907, a financial crisis gripped America, known as the Bankers' Panic. Triggered by rumors of insolvency at the Knickerbocker Trust Company, depositors rushed to withdraw their savings, fearing a total collapse. The panic spread like wildfire, revealing the fragile nature of trust in banking. As banks collapsed, wealth evaporated overnight, and a sense of chaos took hold. This crisis laid bare the interdependence of banks and the economy, leading to the creation of the Federal Reserve in 1913. The lesson? Trust is the cornerstone of finance. Once broken, recovery is a monumental challenge, echoing through history even today. Imagine living in a society where your debts could vanish overnight. This was a reality in ancient Mesopotamia, especially during the reign of King Hammurabi around 1750 BCE. In times of crisis such as famine or war, rulers would proclaim a clean slate for debts. This practice, known as adiab, relieved citizens from financial despair, allowing them to start anew. It wasn't just mercy, it was a strategic move to maintain social stability and avoid civil unrest. The sanctity of property and familial ties were preserved, ensuring communities thrived. This fascinating event showcases how understanding money psychology can impact entire civilizations and their governance. In 1994, a seismic shift rocked the bond market, forever altering investor psychology. It began when the Federal Reserve raised interest rates unexpectedly, sending shockwaves through fixed-income securities. Panic ensued as investors scrambled to sell bonds, fearing further losses. The result? Billions vanished in mere days. This turmoil reshaped market perceptions, revealing the fragile nature of investor confidence. Asset managers pivoted strategies, embracing more aggressive stances. Corporate treasurers became more cautious, reevaluating debt exposure. The 1994 crisis underscored the importance of psychological factors in finance, highlighting how quickly sentiment can shift, impacting markets globally.